There is a word that a significant portion of the population uses constantly, multiple times a day, in texts, in conversations, in professional settings, in the most intimate exchanges they have, and every single time they use it, it does something to how they are perceived that they are completely unaware of. It does not announce itself. It does not create an obvious, nameable moment of damage. It works quietly, cumulatively, underneath the level of conscious notice, and the effect it has on attraction, on respect, on how people read your confidence and your sense of self is more significant than almost any other single word in your vocabulary. The word is sorry. Not sorry as a genuine expression of remorse. Not sorry when you have actually done something worth apologizing for. Not sorry as the sincere, specific, meaningful acknowledgement of having caused harm that it was designed to be. That version of sorry is important. That version of sorry is one of the more powerful things a person can say because it requires genuine honesty about your own failings and genuine care about the person you affected. That version of sorry is not the problem. The problem is the other version, the reflexive version. The sorry that comes out automatically, without thought, not because you have done anything wrong, but because you have learned. Somewhere along the way, through some combination of environment and experience and social training, that preemptively apologizing for your existence in a situation is the smoothest way to move through it. The sorry that precedes a question you have every right to ask. The sorry that appears before an opinion nobody asked you to justify. The sorry that arrives when someone else bumps into you. The sorry that you send at the beginning of a text message just to soften the fact that you are sending a text message at all. That sorry. The one that has become a verbal tick, a social lubricant, a reflexive covering of yourself before anyone has suggested you need covering. That is the one. And what it is doing to you is worth understanding completely, because once you understand it, you will never be able to hear yourself say it the same way again. Let us start with what over-apologizing actually communicates, because most people who do it believe it communicates humility, or politeness, or consideration for other people. And in the right dose, in the right context, it does. But past a certain threshold, which most chronic over-apologizers crossed so long ago they cannot remember what the threshold looked like, it communicates something else entirely, something that works directly against every quality that generates attraction, respect, and genuine connection. Reflexive apologizing communicates that you believe your presence, your needs, your opinions, and your basic existence in a given space require justification. Every unnecessary sorry is a small declaration. I am not sure I am entitled to be here, to want this, to say this, to ask this. I am pre-apologizing for taking up your time, your attention, your space, in case it turns out that I should not have. It is a linguistic hedge against a judgment that nobody has issued. And the cumulative effect of making that declaration repeatedly, in interaction after interaction, is a portrait of someone who does not fundamentally believe in their own right to exist fully in the social world. That portrait is not attractive. Not in the romantic sense, not in the professional sense, not in any relational sense. Not because it reveals weakness. Genuine vulnerability is deeply attractive, as we have discussed, but because it reveals something different from vulnerability. Vulnerability is the willingness to be seen as you actually are, imperfect and uncertain and real. Reflexive apologizing is the opposite of that. It is a constant, preemptive management of other people's potential reactions to you, an anxiety-driven attempt to control how you are perceived by diminishing yourself before anyone else can. It is not openness. It is a specific kind of closed, one that hides behind the appearance of considerateness, and here is the part that makes this so specifically damaging to attraction. The people we find most attractive, most compelling, most magnetic, most worth pursuing, share, across almost every other difference, one quality. They seem to know they are worth the space they take up. Not arrogantly, not in the way of someone who believes they are better than others, but in the quiet, settled, unquestioning way of someone whose right to be present, to want things, to say what they think, simply is not a question they spend energy on. They are here. They have thoughts. They have preferences, they make requests, they ask questions. And none of it comes wrapped in preemptive apology because none of it requires one. That settledness is magnetic because it is rare and because it radiates safety. Being around someone who is not constantly apologizing for themselves means you do not have to manage their anxiety about their own presence. You can simply be in the interaction. And interactions where you can simply be are the ones that feel genuinely good, that feel like connection rather than work. Now let us get specific about where this word shows up, because over-apologizing takes several forms and some of them are more obvious than others. The first and most visible form is the apologetic opener. Starting a message, an email, a question, a contribution in a meeting with sorry as the first word. Sorry to bother you. Sorry for the late reply. Sorry, can I ask a quick question? Sorry, I just wanted to add something. Every single one of these sorry openings is unnecessary. You are not bothering someone by sending them a message in a context where messages are appropriate. You are not wrong to have taken a day to reply to an email. You do not need permission, secured through pre-apology, to ask a question or make a contribution. Remove the sorry from these openings entirely, and what remains is a direct, clear, appropriately confident communication that says exactly what needed to be said without the coding of self-diminishment. The second form is the apology for having a preference. Sorry, would you mind if we went somewhere else? Sorry, I was actually hoping to do something different tonight. Sorry, I'm not really in the mood for that. You are not doing anything wrong by having preferences. You are not inconveniencing anyone by wanting what you want. You are a person with legitimate needs and genuine desires, and the expression of those things does not require an apology any more than the desire itself does. Replace the sorry with the honest expression of the preference. Would you mind if we went somewhere else? I was actually hoping to do something different tonight. I'm not really in the mood for that. Clean, direct, respectful without being apologetic. That version is significantly more attractive than the sorry-coded version because it is the version of a person who knows what they want and says so without manufacturing a problem out of the wanting itself. The third form is the apology for other people's behavior. You are walking down the street and someone walks into you and you say sorry. You are sitting on a bus and someone needs to get past you to their seat and you say sorry as you move. Someone reaches across you for something and you say sorry as you pull back slightly to give them room. In all of these cases, you have done nothing requiring apology. The sorry is purely reflexive, a social lubricant that fills the space of momentary awkwardness. And while a single instance of this is completely harmless, the habit of apologizing for other people's movement through your space is a physical manifestation of the same belief that drives all reflexive apologizing, that your presence in shared space is something to be apologized for rather than something that simply exists, with as much legitimacy as anyone else's. The fourth form is the most painful to look at honestly, the apology for emotion. Sorry, I'm just going through a lot right now. Sorry, I don't mean to be so sensitive about this. Sorry for bringing this up. Sorry, I just got a bit emotional. You are apologizing for having feelings in front of another person, for the experience of your own inner life making a brief, visible appearance. And this form of sorry does something particularly corrosive. It tells the person receiving it that your emotional experience is a problem to be managed rather than a real, human thing to be received. And it tells your own nervous system, repeatedly and consistently, that what you feel is something to be ashamed of when it shows up uninvited. You do not owe anyone an apology for feeling things. Feelings are not impositions. They are not failures of composure that require acknowledgement before anyone can move on. They are the content of being a person. And a person who can allow their feelings to be present without immediately apologizing for them, who can say, "This is hard for me," without appending "sorry" to the front of it, is a person who has made some peace with their own humanity. And that peace is palpably different from its absence. So what do you say instead? Because for many people, especially those for whom this habit is deeply ingrained, the sorry feels necessary for social smoothness. Removing it feels abrupt, feels cold, feels like you are failing to acknowledge something that needs acknowledging. In most cases, the alternative is simpler than you think. Thank you instead of sorry is the most universally applicable substitution, and it is worth understanding why it works so much better. Sorry for the late reply becomes thank you for your patience. Sorry to bother you becomes thank you for your time. Sorry for rambling becomes thank you for listening. Every single one of those substitutions accomplishes the same social function. It acknowledges the situation and expresses appreciation for the other person's grace, while doing something entirely different to the dynamic. The sorry version positions you as a person who did something requiring forgiveness. The thank you version positions you as a person acknowledging something genuinely kind in the other person. One diminishes you, the other elevates them. Both are considerate. Only one maintains your dignity in the process. For the apologies that are covering preferences or needs, the replacement is usually just the direct expression of the thing. The sorry was never about the situation. It was about your own discomfort with having a preference that might inconvenience someone. Remove the apology and what you are left with is the thing you actually needed to say. Say that thing, with warmth in your tone if the relationship calls for warmth, and trust that the people around you can handle you wanting something without being apologized to for the wanting. For the apologies that cover emotion, the replacement is something closer to honesty. Instead of, "Sorry, I'm just going through a lot. I'm going through a lot right now." Instead of, "Sorry for getting emotional." Nothing. Let the emotion be there. Let it belong to the moment without being preemptively managed. The person worth being vulnerable with does not need you to apologize for the vulnerability. They need you to simply be honest. The apology is for your own discomfort with the visibility of your feeling, not for their benefit. Remove it, and what you offer them is something more real and more connective than any apology could be. Now here is the deeper dimension of this, and I want to be honest about it, because it is the part that most content about over-apologizing completely skips. The habit of reflexive apologizing is not a language problem at its root. It is a belief problem. It is the behavioral expression of a fundamental uncertainty about whether your needs, your presence, your opinions, and your feelings have the same inherent legitimacy as everyone else's. And that belief, that quiet, persistent sense that you are somehow an imposition, that your existence in any given space requires justification, that the safest way to move through the world is to preemptively shrink before anyone asks you to, that belief did not come from nowhere. It came from somewhere specific, from environments where your presence was actually treated as an imposition, from relationships where your needs were actually responded to as inconveniences, from experiences where the expression of your genuine self actually did produce the withdrawal of approval or warmth or safety, from the accumulated learning of a system that taught you in 1,000 small moments that taking up space fully was a risk that was not worth taking. Those experiences were real, and the sorry habit that grew from them was a completely rational response to the environment that produced it. It worked, it smoothed things over, it kept the peace, it protected you from something that felt genuinely threatening. But you are not in those environments anymore. Or if you are still partially in them, you are also in other spaces, interactions, relationships, contexts where the sorry habit is not protecting you from anything, where it is just the ghost of a strategy that made sense somewhere else, running automatically in situations where it only costs you. The work of stopping over-apologizing is therefore not primarily linguistic. It is the gradual, patient accumulation of evidence that your presence does not require justification, that your needs are legitimate, that saying what you want, asking what you need, taking up the space you're entitled to, feeling what you feel, that none of those things need to be preceded by an apology, that you can just be here, fully, and that fully is enough. Every time you catch the sorry before it comes out and replace it with the direct expression of what you actually meant to say, you are adding a small piece of evidence to that case. Every time you express a preference without apologizing for it, every time you ask a question without pre-framing it as a potential imposition, every time you let an emotion exist in a conversation without rushing to apologize it back into invisibility, you are slowly, brick by brick, building a different foundation, one where the reflex is not to shrink, but to simply stand. It takes time. The neural pathways of a habit this ingrained are not rerouted in a week. There will be days when the sorry comes out before you caught it, and that is fine. The awareness you are building is not defeated by a single lapse, only deepened by noticing it. But the direction is clear, and the progress is real, and the cumulative effect, over months of consistent practice, is a person who sounds different because they are becoming different. And that person, the one who asks without apologizing, who disagrees without apologizing, who wants things without apologizing, who feels things without apologizing, who occupies their space in the world with the quiet, settled certainty that they are entitled to it. That person is genuinely more attractive, in every sense of the word. Not because they have learned to perform confidence, but because they have stopped performing the absence of it. Drop a comment. How often does the sorry come out for you in a day? In what situations does it show up most? I want to know where this one lands. Subscribe if this is the channel you want in your life. Every week, something that changes the way you move through the world. See you in the next one.